Welcome to CPG, the Cannabis Packaged Goods Podcast, presented by Headset, the leading data and analytics company for the cannabis industry.
In this episode of the CPG Podcast, I had the privilege of speaking with Vishal Rungta, co-founder, president, and CFO of C3 Industries. They have a pretty unique story, having started out in Oregon before moving to Michigan, Missouri, and now Massachusetts. We talk about their CPG brand, Cloud Cover, as well as their retail footprint with high profile. I hope you enjoy the conversation. All right, thanks so much for joining me today in our latest CPG conversation, Vishal.
Thank you, Si. I appreciate you having me.
So I'd love to start with kind of the origin story of C3 Industries. I noticed you guys started in Portland, Oregon in 2018, and you've quickly expanded to other markets. So what can you tell me about, the beginning of C3, what pushed you into this industry, and really how did it all begin?
Sure, yeah. It's actually a question that we talk a lot about or reminisce a lot about. But so my partners and I have two partners, my older brother, Ann Rungta, and my childhood friend, Joel Ruggiero. The three of us have all been in the industry in various forms, frankly, for most of our adult lives. Certainly dabbled in it as consumers for our lives, and actually dabbled is not the correct way to frame it. We've been pretty steady consumers for almost all of our adult lives. And then, have participated in the industry in various ways as well, even prior to forming C3. So for us, it was something that I think was a natural evolution of our careers as we saw this industry becoming a proper kind of regulated industry in a variety of these markets. For us, it was just something we couldn't resist. It married our passion and long-term interest in the plant as consumers with a lot of our career aspirations to build our own company and really to put high-quality product out into the marketplace. Even when we were younger as consumers, we've always pretty proudly been on the more quality-driven side of the spectrum. I'll often joke that we were really pot snobs, whatever that means. And so, for us, we wanted to really focus on producing a high-quality brand, flower in particular. That's where we all grew up. That's where we've all been consuming for our adult lives. And so that was where the whole thing really started and came together. The three of us wanted to band together and set out to produce really high-quality flower that we had been accustomed to as consumers, and that we thought there was a bit of a lack of in the regulated market. A lot of these markets, even today, you'll regularly hear consumer complaints about the quality of the flower relative to what they're used to getting in an unlicensed environment, right? And so for us, it was important that we try to change that trend and that we put high quality product out there, and that all really came together when we started our business and focused on Oregon.
That's great. I guess kind of having a bit of a pot snob mentality is actually a good thing if you're going to be creating high quality cannabis. If you start from that place of really understanding what high quality looks like, it seems like a natural evolution of introducing that into a brand in the market. Was what the industry kind of getting into it formally with the founding of C3, is it basically what you expected originally, or is it any different?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I mean, I would say it's a mixed bag, right? I think a lot of it is what we expected in terms of, again, focusing on that quality, how you actually cultivate the environment you cultivate in. Yes, there's regulations, there's rules, there are, a lot of different softwares and systems you have to utilize in order to always maintain compliance, which is a big focus for our business. But it doesn't change the underlying nature of what you're doing, right? We are still primarily focused on indoor cultivation at some level of scale with a real focus on quality. And so from that standpoint, I think it was what we expected. I think we anticipated also a lot of folks like us in the industry, in the sense of people who have real cannabis experience and knowledge and understanding of the product, the quality attributes, combined with folks who have great professional experience in other industries but may not have as much cannabis experience. And we really try to build our team with both of those things in mind. How do we be kind of world class or kind of pushing the envelope from a functional skill set standpoint, but how do we also make sure that it's a team of people who understand what quality product looks like, who understand cannabis consumers, who understand the culture, who understand some of the history of how it's come to this point. So I think there's always kind of surprises along the way. I'm always surprised by how rapidly this has kind of continued to proliferate across the U.S., how many markets there are. There are always regulatory surprises of which state decided to do it in which different way. But I mean, from a underlying fundamentals, I think it's largely, as we anticipated. I guess the one kind of brand or quality attribute that still always makes us scratch our head a little bit is the incredible focus on THC potency. That's definitely not something we anticipated coming into this. We are, again, as longtime consumers ourselves, nobody 20 years ago was talking about, or 15 years ago was talking about the potency of THC because there was no lab testing, and that wasn't how you determine what was fire, right? It was based on the flavor profile, the aroma profile, how it smoked, what it looked like, the moisture content. So that's always been, I think, a bit of a surprise, but we've, adapted as we've gone. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about genetics and things like that later. So that's, something we're mindful of, but that would definitely be a surprise.
That's a really interesting anecdote, and I think you're right on to think about the days before legal frameworks. There was not the lab testing. I remember in the early medical days, it was kind of a novelty if you went into a dispensary and they were doing testing, and it was, not because of any regulation. They just wanted to kind of share that information with their patients at the time. But you're absolutely right. I mean, cannabis is so much more than THC. It could be. It's a basic metric that people can look to, like who knows how the bud tenders are articulating it, but there's a lot more, the entourage effect and, coming from the terpenes, the aromas, it is very varied. And I have to hope that this industry is early, and it's like, wine, like you don't buy wine on the alcohol content, right? You buy it on the quality, which is a more nuanced factor, and I'm sure this industry will get there at some point, but it is true how so much is focused on THC and price point as kind of the early variables that we've noticed with consumers. But let's dive into C3, and you guys have a brand, like a CPG brand, Cloud Cover, and then you have a retail outlet under High Profile. So did you guys start with one over the other? Did they both come to market at the same time?
Yeah. Like I mentioned, for us, it was really the product first. So the Cloud Cover brand is what came to market first. That's what we launched with in Oregon. And really, again, I think where a lot of our initial interest in the industry was really on that product side. So when we launched back in Oregon, we built a indoor cultivation facility. And the only brand that's ever come out of that facility is all Cloud Cover. So we weren't doing, and we still aren't doing any white labeling or any third-party product. It's all just what we produce in-house, and then we focus on that quality, like I mentioned, and all of it that comes out of there is the Cloud Cover product. As we started getting deeper in the industry, exploring some other markets, some of our brand strategy, was kind of what drove us into the retail as well. And what I mean by that is, we really wanted to start having direct access to consumers as well. We wanted to be able to understand what aspects of the product were resonating, which ones weren't. And it was really a helpful way to get a kind of a complete feedback loop, right? And so, through that and frankly, our expansion as well and wanting to continue to kind of pursue smart opportunities to grow, we then launched the High Profile brand. And so the way we've built the company right now is we have them as two separate brands. So Cloud Cover is purely a product brand. It is not in the retail business. That team's focus and differentiation is really on product quality, product consistency, and ensuring that we're kind of in the wholesale market, in a lot of stores, getting access to a lot of consumers. High Profile on the other side is is very much a retail brand. The strength of that team is in how they curate products, knowing what is good quality flower versus lower quality flower, knowing what is an appropriate price, and then providing a great customer experience. And so, obviously our high profile stores, they carry Cloud Cover product, but we also carry a wide array of other products. And similarly, Cloud Cover will of course sell to high profile stores, but the majority of that business is actually sold through third party stores. And again, for us, it's about making sure that both brands are kind of standing up on their own and focusing on what their kind of strength should be.
Yeah, that's good. It is an interesting aspect of the business when you have vertical integration, but at the same time, doing distribution to other retail organizations, going beyond just a private label brand and actually, selling Cloud Cover through, potentially competitive retailers, and having those kind of, I guess, areas of expertise is I'd imagine key, right? Because driving a retail business is very different than driving a product brand out there, and having people that are able to kind of figure that out would be, I would imagine, very important. As you guys have that retail footprint, there are some advantages. When you think about like a traditional brand, in the sense of no retail footprint at all. Even in, outside of cannabis and any kind of vertical that's out there, they have to sell through retailers. Maybe they have a direct to consumer model, maybe, but often when you think about your favorite CPG brands, with Coca-Cola, Frito-Lay, whoever it is, right? They're going through retailers. And one thing that they're missing is that relationship with the consumer. It's hard to create that direct relationship and get feedback and understand, what is the consumer looking for. And I'd imagine, having that retail aspect would be beneficial to any kind of product development, to get the feedback from maybe your bud tenders that are at your retail locations. Are you guys able to take advantage of any of that? Are there synergies between them, even though with areas of expertise kind of divided between retailers and the brand itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously they are two brands, but they are one company, right? And so we are definitely getting that feedback loop and the benefit of it. And so that's been really helpful and really powerful to hear, not only from our bud tenders, but also directly from the actual consumers, buying at the retail locations. What are they liking? What are they not liking? We can see the sell-through data, but we also even the data is of course incredibly powerful. But even the anecdotes of, understanding if consumers are loving, the nose on one variety we grow, or if they love the consistency on some of our concentrates, or if they're focused on, one of our boutique varieties may have a smaller bud size. And so is that something that they like or they don't like in certain instances, or understanding that kind of potency focus. So really, again, for us, there's all these different attributes that go into high quality products in this industry. And I mean that across categories. That's true of flower, that's true of concentrates, that's true of cartridges, that's true of edibles, any of these categories. And so I think getting the qualitative information, which, is more anecdotal, but you can only get through a conversation with a customer, is really helpful. And then, of course, the data on what's moving, what's the sell-through look like, what are people reacting well to, where's the excitement and the enthusiasm, right? We have certain varieties that we grow in very limited batches, and when they come out, they're gone very quickly, right? And it's great to know that and to plan accordingly. So, yeah, I think we're able to, like I said, kind of benefit from both the data, the kind of quantitative aspect, but also some of the anecdotal or qualitative information that we get from being able to talk to customers directly.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of data, I was looking at some data in Oregon through Headset here, and I saw that White 99 is one of your best-selling flower strains, which kind of, I guess, gets me to the question of, like, how do you guys determine the genetics? And I think you're kind of starting to answer that there with some of that qualitative conversations and understanding what the customers are saying. But, how else do you guys think about it? I see a lot of brands out there that focus on maybe tried and true strains and having a big stable of, different strains that are almost brand names unto themselves. And I see other brands that are out there that are focused maybe on their own genetics or maybe more limited strains that don't have the kind of name recognition. How do you guys think about it? And, as a follow-up, I guess, like White 99 does seem to do really well. And what is it about that strain that you guys look for and maybe bring to your other strains in your brand portfolio?
Yeah. No, listen, it's a good question, or a good series of questions there. So I would say, yeah, on the one hand, there's the feedback that we're getting, the data that we're always looking at. I think the other big part of our product portfolio, or at least of our strain portfolio, really comes from our cultivation team's experience. And my partner Joel is a very talented, experienced cultivator. Was in Colorado for a long time at one of the leading companies out there, and I think that part of the trick of being a good cultivator is also knowing what type of genetics work well within your system, right? So we have a certain cultivation philosophy that our facilities are kind of built around. We have certain nutrients that we run. We have certain processes that we run, and all of these things can work well or not work as well for certain genetics, right? It's not all genetics grow well in different environments, right? And so not only are we looking for that customer feedback and always trying to react to it, but we also have a view on what we know we can produce really well. And so it may be the case that something is the hottest strain out there right now, but we know that if we run it in our system, it will only come out mediocre. We might shy away from something like that, right? And so while it is obviously customer centric in the sense that we want people to enjoy the quality product we're putting out, it's also on us to ensure that we aren't just kind of chasing some fads, even if it hurts our product quality, right? And so we're constantly trying to live in the middle of those things, right? How do we ensure that we have some of the more boutique type genetics that can be really coveted, but how do we also ensure that we have just quality across the board, right? And then the other things as business owners that we have to be mindful of too are things like yield, and how difficult are different plants to grow, and there's operational considerations as well, right? And so that's obviously the less sexy side of the business, but we are trying to triangulate all of these things, right? What works well in our environment, what makes sense overall from a business standpoint, what makes sure that people are also getting some of the unique kind of hype, that they're also seeking. And between those three things, we need to have a portfolio of products that kind of touch on each of them. But we candidly don't want to be too skewed on any one of them either.
Right. Well, I think that's a fantastic approach. I like what you were saying earlier about like kind of the limited edition genetics that kind of come through and sell out quickly, and people are probably excited for that stuff, and then having some that the tried and true that you can have that consistency and that experience and are always available. But it all comes down to just being mindful and really having a strategy around your genetics, because it is a way to kind of differentiate brands at this point, and the way consumers talk about it.
No, totally. And we're focused on, we have some genetics that we have bred in-house. That's something we're doing a bit of now, and actually ramping up are some of our breeding efforts, because we do think it matters from a differentiation and brand standpoint. We also have genetics that are from other well-known breeders that really Joel or his team have relationships with. That's another great way to kind of approach the space. So it's definitely something we're being mindful of. And, I think people also don't always realize that you definitely have to have a strategy on these things, because running a new genetic or dropping, something new to the market takes 6 months of planning, right? You have to go through the entire plant life cycle. So right now we're having conversations around how we want to load the rooms coming in a few months for what will then drop in, kind of the spring or late winter, right? And so it's not as easy as kind of saying, hey, like this is something that would do really well right now, let's go run it and it'll be in the market tomorrow, right? And so that's the other reason that I think some planning and and kind of thinking about, how these rooms come together, the composition, of the strains you're putting out is really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's an agriculture product, right? And it takes time to grow this stuff, and you can only accelerate it so much. And then you have the situation where if you don't think it through and it turns out to be wildly successful and, you don't have enough and you haven't planned far enough ahead, then, that's tough on the consumer when they really like something. Now it's not there, and then there's the delay. So really thinking it through is key.
Definitely. Yeah. No, and you had asked about the White 99, so for example, like the White 99, that's, I think the attributes of that variety are, that one it's a pretty heavy hitting sativa and it tests high. And in a lot of the markets that we're in, we see there's a big portion of consumers that just love these heavy hitting sativas. It has big buds, it's got great bud structure, it smokes well, it's really clean. And so, that's one of our staples that we cultivate that is just a nice, consistent kind of bedrock of our portfolio. But that's not one that if we drop it tomorrow at a store, it'll sell out, right? It's more of a steady, true, everyone knows it, they know what they're getting. It sells well in all of our markets. And then we also have ones that are much more limited in production that are more about, get it while it's there and then know it might not be coming back for a few months.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, speaking of, products, I know that Cloud Cover, a lot of flower concentrates. Are you guys thinking about some of these other categories in the future? Things like beverages, edibles, categories that have a smaller market share, but seem to be, growing as far as percentage of overall sales. Are you guys looking at that, or are you going to stick to kind of the flower-based products?
Yeah. Right now, the focus to date has been, flower, concentrates, and cartridges, right? Those are kind of our three major categories. I think we are interested in edibles as well as beverages. I think part of it has been, again, a bit of a brand strategy for us. First and foremost, particularly with Cloud Cover. Cloud Cover is exclusively focused on full spectrum products, right? So we aren't doing any straight distillate products. So even the cartridges we do are sauce cartridges, so they're mixing, some distillate to have the right consistency and to ensure that the cartridge smokes correctly with a full spectrum sauce that has all of the other cannabinoid and the original terpene profile of whatever variety it came from. Obviously, concentrates, same thing. Those are full spectrum offerings. And so, a straight distillate, say gummy, for example, has been not something that we're really focused on for the Cloud Cover brand. We want that to be, as part of its brand story, more about, cultivating high quality flower and then taking that high quality biomass from Cloud Cover plants and creating full spectrum Cloud Cover concentrates and cartridges, right? We are, though, now starting to explore those other categories and thinking about developing, a brand that would be more well suited to focus on what are often more distillate-based categories. Not to say that there aren't full-spectrum edible offerings. There are, but that's kind of how we've thought about that universe. And so I do think that at some point, in the next coming year or two, we will look at plays in that space. However, we're also trying to be mindful of not doing too many things at once and knowing really what we're good at. And I think our product quality in the categories we're in, the flower, the concentrates, and the carts, has been really well received. We're excited and continuing to hone our craft in those three areas. If and when we feel like we kind of got that down, then I think we will explore some of the other categories. And some of those other categories may also be areas where it makes sense to explore partnerships or collaborations and think about working with folks who have a ton of expertise in those categories, right? So it's another part of the kind of brand story now, is thinking about how do we work with other players in the industry that we respect, both from a product quality standpoint, but also from a cannabis culture standpoint, and use those to ideally elevate both brands, right? And so those are other kind of thinking that we're having right now, particularly as it relates to some of the other categories.
Yeah, that's a really good differentiation there, that you guys are really focused on the the full spectrum sauce, and it is hard to capture in things like edibles and beverages, which are so often distillate. And I think even when brands are full spectrum, anecdotally from my own experience, I think a lot of it gets lost. Some of that nuance that you get with like a flower-based product, whether it's concentrates or cartridges, harder to capture there. And I know there's some new technology that's coming around. We're seeing some edible brands that are doing the nano emulsion, and it's supposed to be ingested in different ways and can capture more of that full spectrum effect that you might get from flower. That one of the reasons why everyone likes flower-based products so much. But it's early, I think, yet, and I think the consumer is not quite there yet either. But it's going to take new brands coming to market to really push those types of things. So it makes a lot of sense if you're focused on more of a distillate type product to kind of separate it from Cloud Cover, so it doesn't kind of dilute the brand itself as people are know it for things like the full spectrum. We'll look forward to seeing what you guys produce, and if it's new brands in these new categories, and there's still plenty of time. They're like beverages is a very small category still. Edibles is pretty small with respect to things like flour, but certainly growing as new consumers come in. I'm sure there's opportunity there.
Definitely growing, and I will say I've tried a lot of products in some of those categories, and there's some great products out there. There's some really high quality stuff. So again, from our kind of starting base mentality here of producing high quality products, those are categories that we would like to be in. We just we want to make sure we go in the right way with the right brand story, and potentially where it makes sense, the right partnerships. Right.
Yeah, I and imagine with the retail component too, you get access to a lot of brands that are out there, and work with those brands, and can be partnerships long term as well.
Yep. Yeah, we carry a lot of third party brands that that we think are doing a great job.
Yeah. So I want to touch on markets. You guys are in Oregon, is where you started. I know you're in Michigan, and I believe it's is it Missouri? Is that?
Yeah, we're in Oregon, Michigan, Massachusetts, and Missouri. Those are
Massachusetts and Missouri, right?
Yep.
So one of the things that I find so interesting about this industry, and interesting maybe is a nice word for it, but is the fragmentation in these different legislative frameworks and just the different rules and how these markets kind of play out. Oregon is a highly competitive market. There's a lot of products, a lot of retailers.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, right. And I don't know if a lot of people, markets like California, not to say it's not competitive, it's very competitive in California, but you look at some of these limited license markets like Florida, where, vertically integrated operators, and there is some competition, but it's just not at that type of scale that you'd see in a market like Oregon, or even, what Michigan is kind of shaping up to be. If you, had your way, like what's kind of your thought? Would you prefer a very limited license market, longer term? Would you prefer kind of what you've seen in markets like Oregon or maybe even Michigan as the model? Because they're all so different. So I'd love to hear, given your exposure to a number of them, medical and adult use, like what you like and don't like, and what you'd like to see kind of going forward.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we launched in Oregon. Like you said, very competitive market. And I will say that I think the benefit of that is that it helped train us to be good operators and to produce high quality products. You can't be in a market like Oregon and just produce some middling, undifferentiated product, whatever that may mean for whatever you produce, and get away with it, right? There's too much choice, there's too many options, there's a lot of competition, right? And so I think from that standpoint, it was great to go into a market like Oregon and really kind of hone our craft, right? And learn how to be efficient, and learn how to really be on top of everything, be consistent, be communicative, be good partners to our retail buyers, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was a tremendous experience for us. On the flip side, you look at a market like Missouri or Massachusetts, the competition is much more limited, and oftentimes, frankly, not in Cloud Cover, but in some of our competitors, we see that in their product quality, where people are getting away with selling, what I would consider to be swag, or mids or whatever kind of, name you want to use for it, for ridiculous prices. And so, I think it allows some degree of laziness, frankly, for some operators when they're in really protected markets. From our point of view, I think we probably would say the middle is somewhere that makes sense. And what I mean by that is that, in Oregon, it's great, I think, because it's given consumers a lot of choice. On the same token, it's been very difficult for the industry, right? A lot of companies in Oregon have gone out of business or have had to scale back. It's can be fairly thin margins depending, again, on whether or not your product is actually differentiated. So I think it forces the kind of cream to rise to the top a little bit. But I would say that in that instance, that's probably gone a little bit too far on the spectrum in terms of maybe too many licenses, too many competitors that make it hard to really kind of manage a business, to an appropriate kind of margin profile, right? But yeah, I think somewhere in the middle is probably right. I also don't think you need to have, Florida has what, I think 22 of those vertical licenses. So there's 22 companies. And I hear from pretty much everybody I know in Florida that a lot of the quality out there is subpar, right? So, I do think that from a health of an industry standpoint, somewhere that is a little bit more limited than at least the Oregon example is beneficial. But from the standpoint of ensuring that there's quality, reasonable price points, and consumers have ample choice, it also shouldn't be as restricted as you see in some of the Northeast and the Southeast states.
Yeah, like most things, I think it's certainly somewhere in the middle that makes the most sense. And you're right. I mean, if you guys can survive or even thrive in a market like Oregon, I feel like there's a lot of advantages as this stuff rolls out state to state, and you're kind of trial by fire, and like I think for some of these that are in limited licenses, it's going to be in ways harder to kind of go and jump into competitive markets like California or like Oregon. Versus the other way around, given, you've had to hone your skills, right, and really differentiate yourself. And I think, the industry is so new and consumer loyalty is still getting there, and like brand, awareness or brand affinity, it's still early. I mean, there certainly exists, but I think if I was in Oregon and I asked someone, what's your favorite brand, and then I went to, another state, I don't know, Colorado, and ask what's your favorite brand, like you probably get two different answers, and probably a lot of that is because the brand's unavailable in both. And so that mass market, awareness is yet to be there. And I think that's where, traditional CPG can kind of excel, right? People can identify with certain brands, when they think beer, they maybe think of a couple brands that just come to mind. And until we get to that point, it can be tough. And, one of the things that makes it tough is the lack of marketing opportunities in our industry. And it's a controlled industry, highly regulated industry, but, not having a lot of the same channels that other CPG industries like alcohol have to build that brand awareness, makes it harder. How does C3 you think about marketing and awareness? And I know you've got some background in the entertainment industry, and we've seen brands kind of leverage some of that as well. And I'm not sure if there's any opportunity there for C3, but how do you guys think about getting Cloud Cover out there, and getting your other brands with that kind of awareness, whether it's Cloud Cover, high profile, whoever it may be?
No, it's a good question. I think for us, I think the way we've approached this has really been, again, the kind of quality first, right? So we focused, at least initially, less on the marketing and more on the quality, right? If we had a high quality product, we would be able to get it in front of retailers and they would carry it. And thus far, knock on wood, right? That's proven true. I think people are excited to have high quality product that is consistent and reliable, and they know that if they want to order X every 2 weeks, like we can deliver that. And so that's taken us pretty far, candidly, and I love that that's where we started, that's our foundation. I would rather have that than great marketing and subpar product quality. But I think now at this point we're really focused on how do we now put that marketing engine, on top of that product quality? And like you said, I think it's hard in this industry. There's a lot of limitations. Your primary channels are really, social and I guess a little bit more broadly digital, but it's difficult to do too much. And so, we are doing some kind of exploring in some of our contacts and from the entertainment space in the Hollywood world. Are there, again, collaborations there that make sense? But we also think they need to be very carefully thought through. They need to be the right personality for a brand. I think we've seen this in the industry. I don't think that just slapping any old celebrity on a brand necessarily means it will work. There have been a number of those that have not worked that well, right? And so, we're certainly open and intrigued because we do think it's one of the ways to create some buzz and get into some distribution channels from a marketing standpoint that otherwise are more limited directly as a cannabis company. But I also think that needs to be kind of carefully done, right? And then, for us, I think a lot of it goes to social, goes to digital. But again, even then, it comes back to some of the product qualities, right? It's the genetics are often some of the best marketing you can do if you do them well, right? The quality is often there. The working with bud tenders to make sure that they're equipped to properly talk about your brand really helps. And yes, we'll do all the other blocking and tackling of websites and social media campaigns and email campaigns and things of that nature. But right now, I don't know that I have a great answer on how to really break through because it is very limited. But we are starting to see some interesting, I guess what I would call marketing innovation, or at least thought leaders in our industry that are doing cool, unique things. I think access points are starting to open up a bit. So you are seeing a bit more mainstream channels become available. And so we're paying a lot of attention to that and simultaneously really focusing on building a really strong internal marketing team and looking, again, to where we started this with functional leaders that have a lot of experience outside of cannabis, looking to bring on the right person from a marketing standpoint who may have some really interesting ideas of how they've seen it done in other spaces that we could leverage.
Yeah, it certainly takes a very creative person to be able to navigate kind of this opportunity and how you can really activate a consumer and, finding that person can think outside of the box. I know it's cliche to say, but like when you can't just go to Google and run an ad, or you can't go to Facebook.
Yeah. And doing it compliantly, right? Because you might have the best idea ever, but the state you're in, their rules may not allow it. Or you might be able to do it in Michigan, but you can't do it in Oregon or Missouri, right? So you're also dealing with a very complex regulatory matrix across markets. So, those are the types of things we're trying to navigate. But, again, from my point of view, I view it absolutely, paramount that we get that right, that we build a strong team. But I also view it as being additive to having really strong product quality, right? So I want it to be the megaphone, but I'm almost as focused on ensuring that the quality stays first.
Yeah, I mean, quality as a foundation is key, right? And all the marketing in the world can't save you if the quality is not there, especially if your brand is marketed on its quality. So keeping that in mind makes a lot of sense. And you make a great point around the celebrity endorsements as well. I think that the data that we see is proven that, there are some that do okay and some that do well, I should probably say, and some that don't. And, there's all sorts of facets to that, execution on the partnership. And there's even like some celebrities' passion for it versus others, and like how much they want to talk about it, promote it versus just putting their name on it. So yeah, being mindful of that and finding the right partner makes a lot of sense. Well, as we close out, you guys in all these markets, in these brands, like anything listeners should be aware of or looking forward to on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think the couple things that I would mention, on the high profile side, we're opening stores throughout the rest of the year. So we have 3 stores open in Missouri. We have 2 more opening in Missouri. So, anybody interested can go to highprofilecannabis.com. We have an email list. You can get updates. You can see the rollouts. There's a lot of promotions happening around these openings. We have another 5 stores opening in Michigan and in big cities all around Michigan. We have 3 stores opening in Massachusetts later this year. So, we're really excited about that. And, obviously want people to know about them and check out the stores and hear what they think and hopefully have a great experience and get some high quality product. And then on the Cloud Cover side, I think the biggest thing for us right now is we are nearing completion of our facility in Massachusetts. And so, assuming that everything goes smoothly, we'll have product in the market in Massachusetts, Cloud Cover product, early next year. And so we're really excited to push Cloud Cover out into the Massachusetts market. We think it's a huge opportunity and another great market for, kind of premium flower. And from what we're seeing, there's a lot of demand and desire for, high quality products. And so, yeah, we're really excited about that. So I would say, everyone in Massachusetts should keep an eye out for Cloud Cover early next year. And then, across all of our markets, there's more high profile stores opening throughout the rest of the year.
Perfect. Well, with travel opening back up, I'm going to be getting out to a lot of those markets. I know in the near term, Michigan, Massachusetts, I've got some travel scheduled. So looking forward to, seeing the stores and looking forward to, trying Cloud Cover.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. And please, reach out whenever you're doing that and make sure to let me know what you think if you have done it.
Absolutely. Will do. Well, thanks so much for the conversation today, Vishal. Really great to learn more about C3 and everything you guys are doing, and congrats on all the success so far.
Thank you, Seb.
Thanks for joining CPG, the Cannabis Packaged Goods Podcast. For more information on Headset, visit headset.io.